doubts. Arjuna had so many doubts about taking part in the battle, so many reasons why he didn't want to fight. Who can remember? Anyone can tell us one reason why he didn't want to take part in the battle?
His love for his family.
All right, yeah, his attachment for the family, we could call that...
Family and friends.
Oh yeah, family and friends. We could say this is like, in other words, he's worried about killing them, being responsible for their death, right? Or injuring them fatally or something. We could call that his compassion. Right? Would you agree? Would you say that was out of compassion?
Yes, Guru Maharaj.
So he was certainly concerned for which people in particular was he concerned about?
Killing about Bhishma, Drona, his teachers, his elders.
Right. Yes, Bhishma, the grandfather, Drona, his teacher. Why was he so concerned about them?
He said, if we kill them, then the future will be, the children born in the future will not be as virtuous as they are now.
Well, that wasn't so much relating to Bhishma and Drona. That was a general statement. But why particularly was he feeling wrong about fighting against Bhishma and Drona?
Because they were elders and they're the teachers.
Right, because they're senior and they're worthy of his worship and respect.
Worship, yes, respect, yes.
Yeah. So, how does Krishna counter this?
Krishna says that as a Kshatriya, it's your duty to fight.
Yeah, that's true. Krishna does say that, but does that make it all right for him to counter for Arjuna's reason, you know, about fighting Bhishma and Drona and people who are his seniors, killing them?
No, he said.
How is Krishna relating to that particular point? This point that, you know, that we should be more compassionate, that it's wrong to...
Does he give an analogy of the soul, because the soul has neither death nor birth, so it is body is something to be discarded, because the soul doesn't it takes one body and then another, but the soul remains eternal. So he's not actually killing the soul, but it's just the body.
Yes, very good. Yes, this is why Krishna is speaking so much about the soul, what we would call the Atma Tattva, or the science of the soul. And Krishna is explaining the difference between the body and the soul. And he's telling Arjuna, well, they're going to die anyway. We're all going to die, whether you kill them or not. You know, it's the nature of the body that we take birth, we're going to die. We're going to die, just like, and Krishna gives the example about changing bodies. What example does he give? Just like changing what?
Just like changing clothes.
Right, yeah. We give up one dress, we get a new dress. So we give up one body, we take another body. So there's no reason to lament, because someone's got a new body. They're happy to get a new body. So this way, this is we'll see in this second chapter and also in the third chapter, Lord Krishna is presenting arguments to defeat Arjuna's reasons for not fighting. So Arjuna had these doubts. One doubt was, that he's worried about people like Bhishma and Drona who are worthy of his worship, that he's not being respectful to them. He should give the proper respect to them. And he shouldn't be going around killing, but he should be compassionate. But Krishna didn't appreciate that. Krishna said, oh, you're speaking words, you're speaking very learned words, but you're mourning for what is not worthy of grief. There's no reason to lament about the dead body. And that's what Arjuna was doing. He was lamenting, there's no point in grieving about the dead body. The body's going to die. You cannot avoid it. So Arjuna shouldn't spend his time feeling compassionate about that. Compassion is a good quality, but the compassion should be based on the soul, not on the body. Okay, so one reason was compassion. Another reason why Arjuna didn't want to fight, do you remember?
Worried about the future society, how the kids will be.
Right, he was worried about the degradation of the society. Do you remember that there's stages which were mentioned there in the Bhagavad Gita? What happens? The initial problem is if all the elders die, if there's no elders there to guide the society, to guide the younger people, if all the elders are killed during the war, then the young people may become degraded without the older people being there to regulate them and to give them the proper direction. The young people may become irresponsible, particularly the men. They may develop bad habits, and then the women will also follow, because if the men are no good, then the women also can follow the men. And then the result of that is, then you get degradation, unwanted progeny, Prabhupada calls it. Unwanted progeny. People have children they didn't really want. But this was Arjuna's fear, that if he fought, he thought, I'd be responsible for creating the unwanted progeny, and there will be people who also give up performing their pious activities like doing welfare work and maintaining the culture. So this was a problem. And Arjuna was also worried about sinful reactions, that taking part in the battle and killing people, some reactions would be there. And Arjuna was concerned about that sinful reactions coming on us. All of us as devotees, we think about this. We're very conscious what we do. We don't want to get sinful reactions. And one more reason why Arjuna was hesitating to fight, he said, I won't be able to enjoy. He said, I won't be able to enjoy. Why not? Why do you think he wouldn't be able to?
Because all the 100 brothers Kauravas will be killed, and there'll be no one to basically show his victory, or someone share the victory with someone.
Right. Yeah, he won't be able to appreciate, because there's no one there to show it off to.
Yes.
All the other people all killed. So you end up just feeling bad about it. So that's something always to be considered when you perform actions. You should always think about these things. So Arjuna was indicating his thoughtfulness. He wasn't acting irresponsibly. He was thinking very deeply about it before taking part in the battle. And this is a very good quality. Sometimes people act very rashly, or they're very quick to do things. They don't stop and think about it carefully. They act impulsively. But Arjuna is not like that. Arjuna's thinking carefully, is this right or is it not? Should I do it or should I not? So that was the first chapter. And then in the second chapter, we hear about Arjuna coming to Krishna and surrendering himself to Krishna. Right? Arjuna surrenders himself to Krishna. What was his reason for surrendering to Krishna?
He was overwhelmed with emotions, and then he just sits down and he says, you tell me what I should do.
Why did he ask Krishna?
Because first they're related, because he says that he's the son of Pritha. Pritha is Kunti's, they're related by blood. But at that point in time, he accepts Krishna not as a relative or as a cousin, but as a teacher. He says that you are my teacher, now you have to guide me.
So Krishna's smiling. He's thinking, very interesting. You know, I'm supposed to be your friend. Now you want me to be your teacher? And Srila Prabhupada said, the relationship between the student and the teacher is serious. So Krishna was testing Arjuna. Are you sure you want me to teach you? Because they've been friends, you know, they'd grown up together and they were equals, the same age. Krishna would always offer his respects to Bhima and to Yudhisthira, and Nakula and Sahadev, they would offer their respect to Krishna, but Krishna and Arjuna were the same age and they would embrace each other when they met. And they would regularly discuss philosophy together. So this was not a new thing which was happening. They would meet often and they would discuss philosophy. But this was a very special predicament, of course, on the battlefield. And Arjuna said his problem was because of miserly weakness. Right? What was his miserly weakness? Do you remember? Arjuna said, because of my miserly weakness.
Is it because of his grief?
Well,
he was overwhelmed with grief.
Why is he overwhelmed with grief?
Because he says that he has to kill his teachers and his elders, like Drona again, like he says Drona and Bhishma, because he says they are elders and they are worthy of worship, and we have to worship them as elders and not kill them.
Okay, but in a general sense, we could say because of his identification with the body.
Oh yeah.
Because of his attachment for the material body. He's identifying with the flesh, rather with his duty and his soul. He's identifying with the body. And because of that miserly weakness, what was the result? He had become confused about his duty. Dharma Viruddha. Right? He'd become confused about his actual duty according to religious principles. So he was asking Krishna to guide him and to instruct him. So Krishna begins, first of all, chastising him and telling him, you're foolish, you're mourning for what is not worthy of grief. Those who are wise lament neither for the living nor the dead. And then Krishna explains that we're all eternal beings, both in the past, now, and in the future. We've always been individuals, but we've had different bodies. And then Krishna goes on to give these different characteristics of the soul, which we're going to hear today more. Okay, so that's briefly what's mentioned, what we covered in the Bhagavad Gita. So, who's going to read? Vaishnavi? You like to read? Is it?
Yes, Guru Maharaj.
You read the Sanskrit?
Yes, Guru Maharaj. Vasamsi chirnani yata vihaya navani grishnati naroparani tata sharirani vihaya jirnani anyani samyati navani dehi. Translation: as a person puts on new garments, giving up old ones, the soul similarly accepts new material bodies, giving up the old and useless ones. Purport: change of body by the atomic individual soul is an accepted fact. Even the modern scientists who do not believe in the existence of the soul, but at the same time cannot explain the source of energy from the heart, have to accept continuous changes of body which appear from childhood to boyhood, and from boyhood to youth, and again from youth to old age. From old age, the change is transferred to another body. This has already been explained in a previous verse 2.13. Transference of the atomic individual soul to another body is made possible by the grace of the super soul. The super soul fulfills the desire of the atomic soul as one friend fulfills the desire of another. The Vedas, like the Mukanta Upanishad as well as the Svetashvara Upanishad, compare the soul and the super soul to two friendly birds sitting on the same tree. One of the birds, the individual atomic soul, is eating the fruit of the tree, and the other bird, Krishna, is simply watching his friend. Of these two birds, although they are same in quality, one is captivated by the fruits of the material tree, while the other is simply witnessing the activities of his friend. Krishna is the witnessing friend, and Arjuna is the eating bird. Although they are friends, one is still the master and the other is the servant. Forgetfulness of this relationship by the atomic soul is the cause of one's changing his position from one tree to another or from one body to another. The Jiva soul is struggling very hard on the tree of the material body, but as soon as he agrees to accept the another bird as the supreme spiritual master, as Arjuna agreed to do by voluntary surrender to Krishna for instruction, the subordinate bird immediately becomes free from all lamentations. Both the Mukunda Upanishad and Svetashvara Upanishads confirm this. Samane vrikshe purusho nimagno anishaya soshati mukhyamanaha dushtam yada pashyati anyam isham asya mahimanam iti vita soka. Although the two birds are in the same tree, the eating bird is fully engrossed with anxiety and morseness as the enjoyer of the fruits of the tree. But if in some way or other he returns his face to his friend, the Lord, and knows his glories, at once the suffering bird becomes free from all anxieties. Arjuna has now turned his face towards his eternal friend, Krishna, and is understanding the Bhagavad Gita from him, and thus hearing from Krishna, he can understand the supreme glories of the Lord and be free from lamentation. Arjuna is advised herewith by the Lord not to lament for the bodily change of his old grandfather and his teacher. He should rather be happy to kill their bodies in the righteous fight so that they may be cleansed at once of all reactions from various bodily activities. One who lays down his life on the sacrificial altar or in the proper battlefield is at once cleansed of bodily reactions and promoted to a higher status of life. So there was no cause for Arjuna's lamentation.
All right, so this very important example is given in the purport here about two birds in the tree. And the tree is like the body, and the two birds are like the two souls. One is the individual soul, and the other is the super soul or Paramatma. And they have a relationship like master and servant. But what happens, the two birds are in the tree and one bird is eating the fruit. The individual soul, or the jiva, we're eating the fruit of the tree. And the other bird, Krishna, is simply watching. Now, we have to understand when we eat the fruits of the tree, sometimes the fruit will be sweet, but sometimes it will be also bitter. And even sometimes there are poison fruits. You don't know. So material world is like that. We're performing activities and there are different results. Sometimes we're suffering, sometimes we're enjoying. So what is supposed to happen is that we're supposed to recognize our relationship with the other bird or with the super soul. We're meant to surrender to the super soul and be directed by him under his guidance, not to just act independently. And when we take shelter of Krishna in the form of the super soul, then we're freed from all hankering and lamentation. So how do we surrender to the super soul? That is the function of, we will hear later on, that the spiritual teacher, he's meant to be the external manifestation of the super soul. The spiritual teacher is there to guide us in our surrender to Krishna. All right, are there any questions on this verse? Srila Prabhupada said the two birds are of the same quality. Right, we see that birds of a feather, they're together. The same kind of birds are together. You don't get one kind of bird mixing with another kind of bird. They keep themselves, they keep in their own groups. They know who is their family friends. I see here in Mayapur, there's so many birds here. And you always see, one group of birds, another group of birds. Sometimes it's cranes, and sometimes it's little sparrows, and sometimes it's crows, different birds, but they don't mix. So same in quality, the soul, same in quality, but doesn't mean they're identical. One is the master and one is the servant. So we're subordinate to Krishna. Same in quality, but different in quantity. Doesn't mean the same in quantity, different in quantity, but same in quality. Quality in the sense that the soul and the super soul are eternal, spiritual. So Prabhupada writes that Arjuna shouldn't lament, that if he's able to help his grandfather and his teacher get new bodies, it's not a big problem because they're old anyway. So they give up the old body, and to die on the battlefield is glorious. It's a glorious death for the Kshatriya. Srila Prabhupada used to say like that I want the benediction of dying on the battlefield. And Prabhupada meant preaching, on the battlefield of preaching Krishna consciousness. He didn't want to just sit down. He said, I want to die on the battlefield. Keep me preaching. So Prabhupada writes that Arjuna should feel happy that he's giving his grandfather and his teacher a very nice opportunity to depart from the world in a glorious way. If you just simply sit at home, it's not glorious. You want to die on the battlefield. We see like Bhakti Swami recently departed from the world. He was also out on the battlefield. He was trying to do his preaching work when he succumbed and gave up his body. So the same way the Kshatriyas, they fight in the battle, and if they die on the battlefield, it's glorious. They're sure to be promoted to a higher status of life. Of course, that's Kurukshetra war. It doesn't mean the people who fight in wars today are blessed. The wars today are of a different nature. It's material politics, but Kurukshetra war, well, it was also politics, but at least it was something of a dharma yudh. It wasn't like wars today with bombs and airplanes flying over and bombing innocent women and children and so on. It was Kshatriyas who'd all come there on the battlefield at Kurukshetra, ready for the chance to give up their life on the battlefield and achieve a higher status. So Arjuna doesn't need to lament. You don't lament for the old dress. When you get a new dress, you don't worry about the old dress. When you get the new car, you don't worry about the old car. Okay? We'll go ahead.
Yes, Guru Maharaj. Just a small doubt, Guru Maharaj. But Bhishma and Drona, they are on the Adharma side, not on the righteous side. So even the soldiers who die on the side of the Adharma, they also get a higher status of life. Is it like that? Oh,
yes. Yes. Everyone who died in the presence of Krishna, they're blessed. They got liberation. Yeah, because Krishna is present. So they're all blessed, both sides. But because they're on the side opposite to Krishna, they cannot be victorious. But they can get liberation when they die in the battle. They can even go back to Godhead. Yeah?
Yes, Guru. So verse 23, Simon Prabhu, do you want to read the verse?
Yes, just a moment, please. Nainam Shihandi Shastrani, Nainam Dahati Pavaka, Nachainam Klendayantyano, Nashoshayati Maruta. Translation: Vesul can never be cut to pieces by any weapon, nor burned by fire, nor moistened by water, nor whitened by the wind. Vaishnavi?
Yeah. Ramya Mataji, do you want to read the purport?
Gladly. All kinds of weapons, swords, flame weapon, rain weapons, tornado weapons, etc. are unavailable to kill the spirit soul. It appears that there were many kinds of weapons made of earth, water, air, ether, etc. in addition to the modern weapons of fire. Even the nuclear weapons of the modern age are classified at 5 weapons, but formerly they were other weapons made up of all different types of material elements. Fire weapons were counteracted by water weapons, which are now unknown to modern science. Nor do modern scientists have knowledge of tornado weapons. Nonetheless, the soul can never be cut into pieces nor annihilated by any number of weapons, regardless of scientific devices. The Mayavati cannot explain how the individual soul came into existence simply by ignorance and consequently became covered by the illusionary energy, nor was it ever possible to cut the individual soul from the original Supreme Soul. Rather, the individual souls are eternally separated parts of the Supreme Soul because they are atomic individual soul eternally, Sanatana. They are prone to be covered by the illusionary energy, and thus they became separated from the association of the Supreme Lord, just as the sparks of the fire, although one in quality with the fire, are prone to be extinguished when out of the fire. In the Varaha Purana, the living entities are described as separated part and parcel of the Supreme. They are eternal, so according to the Bhagavad Gita also. So even after being liberated from illusion, the living entity remains a separate identity, as is evident from the teaching of the Lord to Arjuna. Arjuna became liberated by the knowledge received from Krishna, but he never became one with Krishna.
All right. So in the first paragraph, Srila Prabhupada is talking about how there are different kinds of weapons. Remember, this battle of Kurukshetra took place a long time ago. So we may be thinking, oh, they were very primitive then. But on the contrary, they were very sophisticated and they had very advanced weapons. And the weapons were often released by mantra. With different mantras, they could create things like tornadoes, or we hear about water weapons. You know, we don't know anything about a water weapon, but there are such things in the Vedic times. Different Kshatriyas, they'll be given different astras or mantras by which they could release different kinds of weapons. So it's mentioned here that even you have these different kinds of weapons, it's not going to do anything to the soul, because the soul is spiritual. And these weapons are using material elements. So fire cannot burn the soul, and water is not going to affect the soul, neither the wind or any weapon can cut it to pieces. So then the second paragraph, then Srila Prabhupada takes up the idea of the Mayavadis, because the Mayavadis, they have a different understanding about the soul and about our existence. So the Mayavadis, they're saying that we become covered by illusion, right? And how did we come into this? We came into this existence simply by ignorance and became covered by illusion. Yeah, well, we agree with that we've come into this world by ignorance and we're covered by illusion. But their idea is that we're actually coming from the Supreme, that we're part of the Supreme. So the point is made that we're not exactly part, but we're like sparks coming from the fire. Spark is one in quality, but different in quantity to the fire. And when the spark comes away from the fire, then the spark may fall in the water so it will be extinguished. But if the spark falls on dry grass, then the grass can be ignited. So it depends a lot on association. If we get the right association, our spiritual nature can be awakened. And with the wrong association, we become more covered by the illusion, by the Maya. But it's not that we've become cut off. It's not that like we were part of the Supreme and somehow we became broken away from the Supreme. But we have that relationship. So Krishna consciousness is to bring us back into connection with the Supreme. Yoga meaning to link, to connect. So even after being liberated from illusion, we get an identity. We're individuals, but the Mayavadis say we don't have any identity. We simply merge and become one. We lose our identity. They say this idea of being an individual, this is illusion. They say ultimately it's only oneness. There's only oneness, and we're the part of the oneness. And they give the example about the rivers flowing into the sea, become one with the sea. But we don't accept that example. We say, well, in the sea, there are many aquatics, there are many fish, many different kinds of creatures in the sea, and they're all individuals. So it's not that we're like rivers flowing into the sea, becoming one with the sea. And even if you may see the river flows into the sea, but then what happens, the clouds form and they take the water from the sea, and then the cloud comes and pours the water back onto the land. And then the water comes down the mountains and makes rivers, and the rivers flow back into the sea. And so in this way, we remain in material life, entangled, birth and death, taking birth and dying, take one body, another body. You may enter into the spiritual realm, then you come back, fall back again. But if we become Krishna conscious, then we never need to come back. Okay? Yes, Vaishnavi? Yeah?
Yes, Guru Maharaj. 2.24, Piranglo Prabhu, do you want to read it?
Yes. 224 Jai Prabhupada. Acedioyam adayoma akedio shoshya evacha. Nitya sarvagata shanur achalo yam sanatana. Translation: this individual soul is unbreakable and insoluble. It can be neither burned or dried. Is everlasting, present everywhere, unchangeable, immovable, and eternally the same. Purport: all these qualifications are the atomic soul definitively prove that the individual soul is eternally the atomic particle of the spirit whole, and he remains the same atom eternally without change. The theory of monism is very difficult to apply in this case, because the individual soul is never expected to become one homogeneously. After liberation from material contamination, the atomic soul may prefer to remain as a spiritual spark in the effulgent rays of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But the intelligent souls enter into the spiritual planets to associate with Personality of Godhead. The word Sarvagata, all pervading, is significant because there is no doubt that living entities are all over God's creation. They live on the land, in the water, in the air, within the earth, and even within fire. The belief that they are sterilized in fire is not acceptable, because it is clearly stated here that the soul cannot be burned by fire. Therefore, there is no doubt that there are living entities also in the sun planet with suitable bodies to live there. If the sun globe is uninhabited, then the word Sarvagata, living everywhere, becomes meaningless.
All right, so there's some interesting points here to be understood. That it talks about, first of all, monism. The theory of monism is very difficult to apply. Monism meaning just simply one soul. They believe only in one soul. They don't believe that there are two souls. We say two birds in the tree, but they say no, one soul, just one. We're all souls, and we're a soul, one soul, and there's only one. So this is the monist theory, right? We are dualists, not monists. So, but they claim that the individual soul is never expected to become one homogeneously. The individual soul, it's not expected, but they think like that. They're thinking ultimately all the souls become one. But we say it's not likely, it's not possible. So the different qualities are given about the soul that Prabhupada talks about, how on the sun planet there's also souls, because souls are everywhere. Well, people may wonder, how could there be life on the sun planet? So I explained the other before, right? Do you remember? How can we explain about life on the sun planet? Anybody remember? Is there life on the sun planet?
Yeah, they are saying the soul cannot be burned by fire in the previous verse.
Yeah, so are there souls on the sun planet?
Yes, Guru Maharaj, with this, yes, there should be some souls in the sun planet.
So what kind of body do they have?
They might have a fiery body, like a fire, like that.
Right, yeah, they would have a fiery body, yeah. A body of fire. Just like to live in the ocean, you have to have a particular body to live within the water. You have to have a suitable body to live in the sea, or to live within the earth. They have to have the body of, like a worm, they can live in the earth. And Prabhupada talks also about this sterilization principle, that this sterilization in fire is not acceptable. You know, it wasn't very long ago, I think it was in Prabhupada's time, 1970s, when they discovered that sterilization was not killing all the bacteria. There's certain living entities which live through the heat of sterilization. And so that was like a new discovery in 1970s. But it's information like this is all here in Bhagavad Gita. You understand the Bhagavad Gita, that fire doesn't burn the soul, and there are certain living entities have particular bodies which can withstand the heat. And so even the heat of sterilization doesn't disturb the life, and some bacteria is able to live through sterilization. So life is everywhere. Some people, of course, Christians generally, they think there's only life on Earth. They don't think there's life on other planets. But we say, no, life is everywhere. It's foolish to think there's only life on this planet. What do you say? Tanmoy, what do you say? Any?
No, I completely agree with you, and there is no doubt in that that there is not only life in this planet but everywhere, like many other places. And I think life on this planet is actually, compared to the life in other places, much less. So yeah, Prabhu.
So what about when they say the astronauts went to the moon? They said there was nobody there.
Maybe with our sense of perception, we cannot detect. And if we are not supposed to see, probably that's why we couldn't see.
Okay. Yeah. Generally, we know on the Earth planet, everywhere you go, you find some kinds of living entities. Life is there. So, soul is also described as immovable. Immovable in the sense that it's in the heart. It's located in the heart. That's the point. It's fixed in the heart. Until the body breaks up. And when at the time of death, then the soul's going to leave, going to go out of the body. Now, how the soul goes out of the body, that will vary. There are great yogis, sometimes the soul will go right up out of the top of the head. That's the sign of a very great yogi, that the soul can go right up. And some people do that kind of yoga. They block up the different holes in the body and they force the soul to go up, out through the top of the head. But generally the soul will go out of the mouth or some other lower place. There are different gates in the bodies, so the soul can leave through these different gates. Okay, any comment, a question? Any comments, anybody? If there are no comments, we can go ahead.
Two 2.25. Fernando, Prabhu, do you want to read it? Okay, Jai Shri Mataji, can you please read the verse?
Avyaktoyam anchitoyam avikaryoyam uchyate tasmad evam viditva ainam nanu sochitam arhasi. Translation: it is said that the soul is invisible, inconceivable, and immutable. Knowing this, you should not grieve for the body. Purport: as described previously, the magnitude of the soul is so small for our material calculation that he cannot be seen even by the most powerful microscope. Therefore, he is invisible. As far as the soul's existence is concerned, no one can establish his existence experimentally beyond the proof of Shruti or Vedic wisdom. We have to accept the truth because there is no other source of understanding the existence of the soul, although it is a fact by perception. There are many things we have to accept solely on grounds of superior authority. No one can deny the existence of his father based upon the authority of his mother. There is no source of understanding the identity of the father except by the authority of the mother. Similarly, there is no source of understanding the soul except by studying the Vedas. In other words, the soul is inconceivable by human experimental knowledge. The soul is consciousness and conscious. That also is the statement of the Vedas, and we have to accept that. Unlike the bodily changes, there is no change in the soul. As eternally unchangeable, the soul remains atomic in comparison to the infinite supreme soul. The supreme soul is infinite, and the atomic soul is infinitesimal. Therefore, the infinitesimal soul, being unchangeable, can never become equal to the infinite soul or the supreme personality of Godhead. This concept is repeated in the Vedas in different ways, just to confirm the stability of the conception of the soul. Repetition of something is necessary in order that we understand the matter thoroughly without error.
So this is a very debatable point, you know, about the existence of the soul. Ordinary materialistic people, they won't accept the existence of the soul. We talk about the soul and they say, well, have you ever seen the soul? And you can ask doctors, have doctors seen the soul? They may do heart surgery, do they see the soul? And they say, nobody's ever seen the soul. You can't prove there's a soul. So Srila Prabhupada counters this. He said, it is a fact by perception, but you have to be willing to perceive it. We have to be open to understanding these things. We have to accept some authority, that we have to hear from the authorities. The authority in this matter is the Vedas. The Vedas tell us there's a soul within the body. And it's described here, the quality of the soul, invisible. You can't see it, so you can't expect to see it. It's invisible and it's inconceivable. You're not going to understand it with our limited mind and senses. It's inconceivable. So how is it possible to understand the presence of something which is invisible and inconceivable? We have to hear from the proper place, proper authorities. And Prabhupada gives this powerful example. And just like you want to know who the father is, the mother is the authority. And similar, well, we may say, well, DNA, that's medical DNA. May work, may not. That's not so reliable. But generally, the mother is the authority. And similarly, want to understand the soul, we have to hear from scriptures. Then only we can understand the soul. The Supreme Lord is infinite, and the soul is infinitesimal. Very small, very tiny, right? 1/10,000th of the tip of the hair. So it's very, very infinitesimal, smaller than we can imagine. It's inconceivable and invisible. Because it's so small, it's invisible. But it's present, and its presence is understood by consciousness. The soul is consciousness and conscious. So without the soul, no more consciousness in the body. So it's difficult sometimes convincing people about the soul. People don't like to accept that there is such a thing as a soul. Why not? Because they don't like to accept that there could be another life after this one. They think at the time of death, everything is finished. But if there's a soul, then they have to admit there's going to be another life. They're going to take another body. That's something for people to think about. They don't want to think about that. Therefore, they don't accept that there's a soul. That's why. It's a good reason for them to have their nonsense activities, to do all their sinful things. And they think at that time of death, it's all finished. Everything's finished. Do you agree, everyone? What do you think? Any comments?
Yes, Maharaj.
So you can see Krishna is repeating this several times about the body and the soul. Really wants to make it clear because it's so important. So important. It will come again in the 13th chapter. In the 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna will bring up this again about the nature of the soul and the body, difference. He presents this in a different way, but it's the same basic philosophical point. And the repetition is done to enforce the argument, to make it very clear and to impress it upon us, because it's such an important point. So Prabhupada spoke about this over and over again to convince us and to help us to understand, make it very clear. If we just spend all our time thinking only of the body, we neglect the most important part of life, the real person within the body, the soul. We have to take care of the soul, and we have to learn how to take care of the soul. That we're learning from Bhagavad Gita. Okay? Any other questions? Any comment? Nothing? So maybe we will chant now?
Yes, Guru Maharaj. There is something in the chat. We accept Achintya Beda Beda Tattva, which is inconceivable oneness and simultaneous difference. Someone has commented. Pradanglo has commented. Yeah.
Yes, we accept this philosophy given by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, inconceivable, simultaneously one and different. Yeah, this is the philosophy taken up by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Each of the Vaishnava Acharyas, they have their different philosophies. Sripad Ramanujacharya's philosophy is Vashishta Dvaita, a little different. It means Vashishta Dvaita, purified monism. And then there is also Dvaita Dvaita and Dvaita. The different Vaishnava Acharyas each have their different philosophical presentation. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teaching, simultaneously one and different, that we're one with God and at the same time different from Him. One in quality, different in quantity. Inconceivable. So what is inconceivable can become conceivable by the grace of the Lord, that Krishna can reveal Himself when He's pleased with the devotee. And the way to please Him is by devotional service. Okay, so we will chant now.
Yes, Guru Maharaj.